I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Ballara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you. Hi everyone, I'm Jason Ballara and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Elijah Brown. Elijah is a multifaceted individual with successful careers in both real estate and the military. After earning a bachelor's degree in business from University of Southern California, Elijah began his real estate career as an analyst for Healthpeak Properties, a S&P 500 REIT. Elijah, you got a lot in there in your bio. I think it's going to be a super interesting conversation, but I want to let the listeners hear it from your words. So first, let me just say thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, I really appreciate being on, Jason. It's I've seen some of the lineup on your podcast. You've had some big names on there, so I'm definitely honored to be kind of included in your list of guests. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. I'm excited. I've not no favoritism. I know there are in theory bigger names, but some of the best stories, some of the best backgrounds I feel like come from maybe some of the guests that are earlier in their journey. So I think it's just it's a great conversation to have with anybody kind of in the industry. So with that being said, let's start. Let's hear your background and we'll kind of dive in wherever it goes.
Yeah, I actually started off back when I was still in college. And I was really into stocks and trading stocks and foreign currencies as well. And I had an internship at a hedge fund, and I realized very quickly that I was not interested in that space, that, the secondary markets were a little too risky and too stressful for me. And so, I needed to do a pivot, and I went down this YouTube rabbit hole of real estate and watched every video I could from Chris Crone and Graham Stephan, Phil Pustajovsky, Bigger Pockets, Brandon, I know was on your show. And I fell in love with the idea and realized, wow, this is probably a much better way to spend my time. And so while I was still a junior in college, I decided that I was going to buy my first rental property, just a single family house. But I didn't have nearly enough cash. I had saved up about $20,000 and from working three part-time jobs while I was in school. And I had that money, but I needed like 50 to get a house for the down payment and the closing costs and renovations. So I gave my best friend and my cousin a call and pitched them this wild idea of doing our first house together and seeing if it works. And they agreed to do it. So we went out and bought our first $150,000 house in Orlando, Florida, and we put a tenant in it, and that was it. It wasn't as smooth as that. There were a lot of bumps in that process, including me having to go to military training in the middle of closing and signing over power of attorney and having to sneak into a porta-john in the middle of the night in the woods and check my emails and emergency sign some stuff. So it was definitely a wild situation. But overall, I really loved the process. And, we did make money on that first property, although we shouldn't have. So we got lucky with a good market on that one. But I loved the process. And I ended up doing 3 more of those. And then I got a job. So after graduating from the University of Southern California, I actually got a job at a real estate investment trust. And they're one of the top healthcare REITs that are out there. They have a lot of assets under management. And I figured, working there would give me some of the skills that I would need to pursue my real estate investing journey on my own, and that was definitely the case. I spent 4 years there, learning a lot about modeling and deal analysis and pitching to the investment committee and stuff like that, and just got a really good understanding for how deals work and the different cash flows that are part of those deals. And so I spent a lot of time building Excel models, learning about deal structure and cash flows. And then on nights and weekends, I spent like almost every spare hour of my time putting small multifamily deals together. While I was there, one of my mentors told me that if I ever wanted to scale, I needed to go into multifamily. And I understood all the benefits and everything involved, and I really wanted to grow an empire. And so I got my first sixplex with the help of 10 friends from work and a few others, each putting in like $5,000. And it was, again, probably one of the most stressful closings ever. I had to literally go and meet with the seller at some hotel and beg him to like seller finance me $20,000 just to be able to close the transaction. And we actually made a lot of money on that one. That was good. That was like a 60% IRR. We actually sold it just this last year. But so we did that, and then I loved that process, especially the part about working alongside partners to go after something bigger. And so then I just kept doing that over and over and over again for the 4 years while I was still an employee. And then just this past year, my portfolio, including both GP interest, so actively managed, and LP, which is just deals that I've invested my own cash into other people's deals, I'm up to 850 units. And the total value of that portfolio is a little over 100 million. And that's cool. I'm 26 years old, and I don't know many other people who have been able to acquire that many units so fast. And so, I realized that my expenses are kind of taken care of with the income that's coming in and the promote fees that I'm earning on the back end of these deals. And so, I decided to give it a shot, just running it on my own and trying to grow this company as large as I can. And so that kind of brings me to where I am now, and I'm going after much bigger deals. And I'm trying to focus on what I'm really good at, which is deal analysis and capital raising. So I don't necessarily enjoy so much the asset management or being in the weeds of the property. But I do really enjoy networking with my investors, communicating with them, and also analyzing opportunities. And so I'm trying to focus on bringing those skill sets into larger deals now, specifically in the Phoenix market. So.
Very nice. Very nice. I mean, I get really fired up when I hear about sort of young people that are starting in real estate at such a young age. You were thinking about this in college and started doing something with it in college, and it's like, I love it because there's nothing more powerful than time in terms of building your wealth. And it's like you start at that young age, you've already done a ton, you've already accomplished a ton, but you have so much time ahead of you, which is amazing to allow that to grow. So you can just kind of continue that process. You don't necessarily have to worry about like, that you don't have enough time to kind of get there. So I think it's a really important thing for young people listening to realize, like, if you take some steps, take advantage of what's going on earlier on in your life in terms of investing in yourself and in real estate or investing in anything really, but just getting started earlier. I think it's a really great, sort of picture that you paint there, Elijah, that of where you're at such a young age. So good for you. Congratulations.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So within your portfolio, it sounds like you did, sort of a lot of these smaller multifamilies, and now you're moving on to larger multifamily. What at what phase in that process are you at right now? Have you closed any, like what's your biggest deal, or tell us about kind of where you're at with that process?
Yeah, sure. So I've actually been part of a few mid-sized transactions already, and then just this week we're closing on our first 100+ deal. But and something important to note is that I'm not doing this by myself. I've got people that I work with, and I'm almost always coming in, with partners as co-GPs into these deals, because I don't have 10 or 20 million dollars to sign on the loan. I don't have the ability to raise 10 or 20 million dollars, but what I can do is valuable, and sponsors understand that. And so when I'm going into these much bigger deals, I'm bringing a certain value to that deal in exchange for my sponsor shares in that deal. And that is really what's allowing me to go into these bigger deals. Whereas with like the 5 to 20 unit realm, I was doing that, myself, signing on the loans, taking on all the work, raising all the money for that. But now that I'm trying to scale, I really need to essentially work with other people to get that done. And so, yeah, that's we've closed on now a large property, and so I've got one of those as of now, and then last year we bought a few mid-sized properties as well.
Mm-hmm. And in that, I think it's important also for people to understand, like there's no sort of wrong way to be in real estate, right? And you're, as you said, with the smaller ones, you're doing a lot of it yourself, but you're having presumably a larger piece of the ownership, right? So it's like people talk a lot about scale. We do these bigger and bigger deals, but yeah, most of the time, especially kind of early on in the process, you're getting a smaller portion of those large deals than you might on the smaller deals. But it's a process, and you sort of work your way through that. And it's honestly hard to say, like there's pros and cons to both, right? There's pros and cons to having smaller deals that are I personally would like to have kind of both in my portfolio. I'd like to have some smaller deals that I own myself, or with, a couple friends or a couple family members. I'd like to have that, because those are the type of deals in my mind that you might decide to keep for a long time, right? And so those can become your legacy properties. Whereas a lot of times in the syndication model, we're looking at anywhere from like a 3 to 7 year hold time, and so that's kind of a turnover type of process, which there are reasons for both. So it's great to see kind of what
it's interesting on the smaller properties. Like I'm actually making more money on those.
Right.
Like I own the majority of the sponsor shares on those deals, and so when the promote payment comes at the end, or the acquisition fee, the asset management fees, like I get to keep most of that. And for a lot of people, like I would recommend just staying within that niche. There's not a lot of private equity and institutional capital doing smaller deals like that. It's a good space to be in, but there's limitations. You can't scale as much, and then the way that I'm doing it is eventually, I will be in a position where I can have a lot more of that deal, and then when the promote comes and it's $50 million, then it has been worth it at that point. So it's kind of a much longer game, but it's one that I think will pay off, and is why I'm going for it.
Yeah. There's a lot of reasons, and as you said, it's the long game, right? It's so that down the road you are the person that can sign on that loan, both from an experience and a liquidity and a net worth standpoint. You are the person who whatever role it is you decide to sort of really take hold of within the process, you get really be front and center on that, and maybe you reach the point where instead of partnering, you're hiring people to fill the gaps. So there's a lot of different ways to take it, but ultimately everything you're doing is just moving the needle towards bigger success. And you mentioned that you seem to like capital raising, and then is finding deals, or sort of is that your wheelhouse? What are you really focused on?
Yeah, so having had the corporate real estate experience, as as an analyst, I got good at modeling cash flows, and so like I know what to look for and how to conceptualize a deal, quantitatively. And so when I get an offering memorandum sent to me from a broker, from someone else, or if I'm reviewing someone else's syndication deal, I can dive very deep into the financials and the Excel model, and I can poke holes all over it and stuff. And so that's one of the skill sets that I have. And so that is one of the values that I can bring. But yeah, also raising money. So and I think that raising capital is in a way the best job to have on the team, at least for me. If you can be like personable and be good at networking and talking to people, it's one of the most rewarding things, not just from the relationships that you're building, but also financially. So you're doing a lot of work up front for 2 or 3 weeks to raise that capital and make those relationships, but then once the deal closes, it's relatively hands off. It's kind of like passive, but you're still an active manager in the deal. And so, you're earning your shares in the deal, from work that you do up front. And I really like that concept. And it's the same with deal sourcing and underwriting as well. You're doing a lot of upfront work in the deal, to put these, opportunities in place and to establish the systems. And then, the team takes over from there. And it's similar to, starting up or running a business. You want to do all of the really hard work to establish the opportunity and to vet it and put it together, and then you're going to hire the team and train the team to then manage things so you can go find better opportunities and more opportunities down the road. So
yeah, no, it's a lot of the guests have had, everybody has their superpower, their strength within the process when we're talking about syndicating. And I think being able to raise capital is it's funny that you say it's the easiest. I see why you say that, in the sense that a lot of that is upfront, but depending on, yeah, it's not easy. Like depending on your person, right? Exactly. And that's what I love about like this whole team approach is it's like, it's not easy to me. It's probably, to me, the hardest part of all of it. Like I in fact enjoy asset management. I like,
Sure.
sort of putting the business plan in place. I even like acquisitions, but I find capital raising to be, I think it's super rewarding, and it's cool when you're able to like put these opportunities out to investors, and you talk to someone who really understands and wants to be. It's nice to bring them into that world. But I think it's a kind of a high pressure thing during that, close time, right? You've got to raise a certain amount of money.
Oh yeah.
In a short period of time. So there's definitely, I think, personality types, or whatever you want to call it, just people that gravitate towards that. I know there's a lot of people in the space that just really like capital raising, and I'm like, thank you, more power to you. That's awesome. Those are the people that I need to partner with, that kind of thing. So what do you find about that? I mean, talk about capital raising and why you enjoy it, why you think that's, kind of your superpower. And I know, well, I'll leave it at that question. I'll have follow-up questions, but yeah, tell me why you enjoy it and think that's, kind of your spot.
I think being the guy that understands the deal the most, from having that underwriting and analysis background, talking about the deal comes very naturally to me. I don't need to read from a deck or slides, because I know every single number and fact about that deal. And so talking about it with prospective investors is not so much a chore or a burden. It's just natural. It comes out as just a conversation that I can discuss. And it's becoming rare that sponsors in this space these days like truly understand what they're selling to investors. I've just found that a lot of people, they're not underwriting experts, and so they don't really comprehend all the cash flows that are coming in and out of the deal. And that translates over to how they're explaining the investment and answering questions with their investors. And, and I know this was one of the topics that we were going to kind of dive into, but I think a lot of mentorship and teaching programs and courses have sprung up over the last few years, which is awesome. But the students who go through these programs, they do the initial training, and then I don't think they then fully understand what's going on in these deals enough to be able to have, a very logical conversation and answer very complex questions about the deal, like explaining how a preferred return works. Like, seems simple to me, but the concept of trying to explain that is not simple, and a lot of people have a hard time understanding how it works. And there's different types of preferred returns, stuff like that. And so for me, it just it comes easily as the underwriting guy, as the deal analysis guy, and I think that is what contributes to me enjoying it more. The other part of it is that when I get someone to say yes, I know that I've just allocated their capital into a great opportunity, and they'll be able to reap the rewards from that later. And so I feel really good about that. And it's also just really nice, when it starts clicking. At first, it's really hard, but then, once you get, 3 or 4 emails in a row saying, sure, I'll put 100,000 into that deal, I'll put 100, it feels really good. I really like that. And then, just those investors, for me, my investors, they're not just, contacts that I've made throughout the process. Like, I actually consider them to be friends, and some of them are family. And so I like the process of, meeting with them, calling them, establishing deeper relationships with them, and ultimately helping them, do what I've done with investing in real estate. So.
Yeah. No, those are great points. And I think one of the things, you talked about your background as an analyst, and that you really know the numbers. And it's not, I find, you tell me if you disagree, I find that most investors, they don't actually know all the, like, if you're talking to maybe family offices and things like that, like at a higher level, but most of your sort of family, friends, retail investors, they may not understand all the numbers, but you've got to be able to put it out to them in a way that they can understand it at least a base level. They know what they're getting themselves into and feel comfortable with it. And so it's almost like a ability to translate, right? Like, you've got this complex set of numbers and spreadsheets and analytics, and you've got to sort of bring that to them in a way that's easily digestible, and then be able to answer their questions that they might have related to that. So
it's just like being like an educator, a professor, a teacher. Like, you have to know the material so well that you can dumb it down to like a 3rd grade level. And that's it.
Yeah. And it's not to say that the investors are dumb. It's just that's like, a lot of people may never have heard of a syndication, or may not have ever been involved in something like that. So you've got to be able to give it to them in a format that is just kind of easier for them to comprehend in a short period of time. Like, sure, maybe if you had 6 months or a year to like, teach them all the ins and outs of everything, great. But and I think that your sort of 2 skills, the underwriting, the analytics, and then capital raise, they really do go together well, in terms of what that, being able to make that translation, because you do know it at such a high level. But if you can, kind of then bring that down into basic pieces, it helps a lot for people's understanding.
Yeah. The reality is that we are offering investment advice to people who may have never, bought a rental property before, or the only thing they know is putting their money into the S&P 500 through their 401k accounts. Like, it's not a lot of people understand the mechanics of how a multifamily property works in terms of the cash flows, and then to add another layer of sponsor compensation on top of that, and the mechanics of investing in a fund structure, it can be very complicated. And so I'd say like 90% of the job of capital raising is education. You first need to help the investors to understand what the opportunity is and how it works, before you can even ask them, are you comfortable enough with these risks and with these rates of return to invest in this deal? And so I think a lot of newer investors are they're being misled, or they're just investing blindly, and they don't truly understand what they are investing in. And I think it's pretty dangerous. And I think we're going to see in this market downturn right now, we're going to see a lot of pissed off LPs who are going to sound the alarms, and if they get a capital call, or if distributions stop, they're not going to understand why or what that means for the deal. And these sponsors, I think some of them will be in trouble. So.
Yeah, very very important to educate and communicate sort of openly and clearly with the investors. It's not that things are going to happen. We are experiencing a market downturn. Like, things are going to happen like that. It's just having the ability to, again, communicate that hey, may not always go perfect, but we're gonna work through this, and this is how, and that sort of thing. So yeah, super important to keep those lines of communication open. I love that. Elijah, let me switch gears here. I want to ask you the questions that I ask every guest.
Sorry, the dog's barking.
Oh, don't worry about it. Well, my dog's not out here, but it wouldn't shock me to hear him. We have, so as far as the first question, based on the name of the show being Know Your Why. So what is your why? What drives you? You're a young guy. You've done a lot in a short period of time. So what keeps driving you towards bigger and bigger success?
There's three main things. And the first one is that I have the curse of the entrepreneur, and I'll explain that. It's kind of like why Elon Musk is sleeping on the floor of the factory. We are just constantly active, and our brains can't rest. And so I'll be on vacation or at the beach or something, and still scheming in my brain about deals. And so it's the process of the deal, getting the deal, that I really love. I'm a deal junkie. So that's number one. The second thing is, of course, what everybody wants, which is, to have their time back. So I love to travel. I actually travel full-time out of a converted Mercedes Sprinter van with my girlfriend. And so I'd like to have more travel experiences in my life, and then, ultimately be able to be there for my kids whenever they need it, when I have kids, and just be available for my family. So that's a very important part as well. And you can only do that once you've replaced all your expenses with passive income. So that's a big reason. The third thing, though, is I really want to do venture capital one day. So I want to invest, either angel invest, or be an active investor in cool new companies that I think will do well. I used to watch a lot of Shark Tank, and I just always thought it was really cool, and I just want to be part of some cool opportunities. And then eventually, later on in life, and I feel like I'm still a little young to understand what this fully is, but I would like to do some type of making the world better type of action once I've accumulated some wealth. So
awesome. I mean, that's all obviously very admirable, and I think look forward looking in terms of sort of these ideas. It's funny that you mentioned Shark Tank, and we talked about sort of investors knowing what they're pitching, and I also like Shark Tank. It's a pretty cool show, and I think the funny thing is that my view of Shark Tank when I used to watch it before I started syndicating and having conversations with investors, and now has really changed in terms of, some of these people. I'm like, did you practice this? Did you know? It's kind of like,
Right.
and it goes back to what you were talking about in terms of just knowing what you're saying, what you want to present to those investors. It's like sometimes there's preparation and there's knowledge that goes into, kind of having that pitch. You're trying to solve problems and provide opportunities, not just sell. So coming out there
in the corporate environment, where I came from, it's like, if you don't know your numbers cold and can speak, intelligently about them, then, you screwed up and you might get fired. It's like,
right.
Yeah.
No, it's I don't know. I know it's a, sort of a bit of a reality show, but I think that there's a lot of actual valuable lessons in there. And
I think we don't see what goes on behind the scenes. They just they show us the most important cuts.
Yeah. But they do, people that don't know their numbers, it comes up time and time again. Same thing with the I don't think it's a show anymore, but I would watch the Profit with Marcus Malone or Marcus Lemonis, and it's like he goes into these businesses, and immediately, if they don't know their numbers, it's like, nah, well, never mind. It's just kind of, you got to know what's happening. So it's it speaks to what is important in business, and with real estate syndication being a business.
You immediately lose credibility as soon as, someone asks you a question that you can't answer, or you don't, have some type of response to. And I think, like, for me, if I'm being pitched and like I ask a question, as soon as that person like kind of like stutters or like doesn't necessarily know or gets a number wrong or something, I'm just like, I've almost written that person off, as in like, wow, you don't know the numbers, how can I trust you with my money? Like, so I think it's important.
Yeah, no, it's important stuff. Second question for you, Elijah. And you can't use living in a van. That's not, you've already given that one away. But it's tell us something about yourself that isn't common knowledge. Special skill or a hobby or something like that. But yeah, you've already given away van, so you have to come up with a new one.
Okay. This one was common knowledge 10 years ago, but certainly not in the multifamily circles. So I used to play drums professionally in a band. I actually dropped out of high school to do that for a few years, which was really cool. We rode around in a van and played at dive bars, and it was slept in trucker stops, and it was a fun time. But yeah, I did that. What else? So my landlord, where I was renting an apartment a few years ago, did not appreciate me having even electronic drums in the unit, because I would bang them and the person below me would get really upset. So I recently made the transition to guitar, and now occasionally I'll write a comedy country music song that's about a deal that I've done or a person that I've worked with, and you might get one, but
that's awesome.
I wish I had my guitar with me. I would have done a guest appearance.
Play one for us. We'll get you back on, and you can play something for us in the future. Is this a band that I would know about, that you play drums for? No,
definitely not. It's like one of those like unknown boy bands that went around, and we played for like 500 people at a time or something like that in a bar. It's like
still
we weren't selling out Madison Square Garden or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, I was in a band at a very small, even smaller level than that. I just loved it. I just love music. So it's, to me, that's like just a super fun experience to have had. So good for you.
I can't wait to settle down one day and start my dad band.
Right. Yeah. Dad band. And then you bring your kids into it. You just, it'll be that music. This is a funny story that I actually don't think I've talked about this on the podcast at all, but so we have a piano. Lots of people have a piano. Nobody in my house actually knows how to play the piano. I got it shortly after my son was born. I got this notification that one of the local universities was selling from their music program. They had a bunch of pianos that they were selling, and that went to charity. The proceeds went to charity. And I was like, hey, I've always wanted a piano and wanted to learn how to play piano. Also, I have a son that we could someday learn how. So
Yeah.
we have a piano instead of a dining room table. We don't have a particularly big house. We live in Los Angeles, so
Yeah.
it's a source of a little bit of soreness with my wife, because she would like to have a dining room table. She's like, nobody plays this, but every once in a while now we have two kids and they'll sit up
Yeah.
there and they'll bang away on the keys, and I'm like, someday this is going to be important that they
What
have
part of
music
Los
in their life.
Angeles are you guys in?
We are in, it's called Atwater Village. It's like the northeast corner of Los Angeles,
Okay.
right across
Cool.
from Griffith Park.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So, I lived in LA for a while because I was going to school, and I ended up going to Orange County to work, but familiar with the area a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's I love it. I mean, it's really nice, and I mean, Southern California is just always nice weather.
Yeah.
It's basically never not sunny. Um, anyway, that's a tangent, but yeah, I too enjoy music very much. So
Cool.
pretty cool. When people hear this, Elijah, and they want to reach out to you, what's the best way?
Right now I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So linkedin.com/in/Elijah W. Brown. Or just Google LinkedIn, my name. That's probably the best way to get in touch with me right now. I usually post an article once a week, and I try to do at least one other post a week as well.
Okay, perfect. We'll get that in the show notes for people. Final piece of advice for you, and you're young enough to maybe have some recent experience with this, but what would you tell people who are getting started, right? They want to get into real estate. They hear this, they're inspired by your story. What would you tell them about getting started?
Yeah. I'd say first do a lot of learning. So read the books, watch the podcasts, and then get a job at a real estate company. Like, work for someone else for 2 years, maybe, a company that's doing what you want, whether that's multifamily or retail office, and work in, I'd say, try to get a job in their investments team, it's the acquisitions department, and learn how deals are done. Go through the process of underwriting deals and presenting them to the committee, and learn what you have to do. And then I'd say on nights and weekends, like what I did, focus on starting some type of side hustle where you can make significant amounts of income. I'm often talking about like Rich Dad Poor Dad, and one of the first steps, when you go to play the cash flow game is, let's first like make a bag. Let's first get to our first $100,000 or whatever. Do something that might be risky to get your first pool of capital, because then you can start investing it passively or doing something a bit bigger with it. So I'd say definitely get a job working for a real estate company so you can learn everything you need to do. And then, and this goes for any industry. If you want to start a business doing something, it's not a bad idea to go work for a company that is doing it already. And then while you're there, start a side hustle and figure out a way to make a lot of income, so that you can leave that job and do it full time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And getting a job with someone who's doing is, I think so many people, they see, and maybe it's somewhat our fault in the sense that people on social media tend to put out like the highlight reel and how I got so successful so quickly, or so whatever it was. I left my job and so much, so people want to get into real estate and then instantly be rich and instantly not have a job and all of that. But it kind of really doesn't work that way. Like, I'm sure there are people that get super lucky, or people that just, I don't know, are outside the norm. But generally, most of us, it's a slow process. But a way to speed up that learning process is go work for someone else. Go do that job and do more than that job, right? Get in there, not just, yes, the side hustle to make more cash, but like at that job, you may not, you're not going to come in and be the CEO. Like, get in there as an assistant or whatever the case may be, but get yourself involved in everything so you can learn all of it, and essentially, sort of paid education. So
you're not working for the money, you're working to learn something so that you can make a lot of money later.
Yeah. You got to remember this is a sort of get rich slow, but get rich for sure. So it's just being a little bit patient and putting in the work. So I love that. Elijah, thanks for coming on today. Been really great talking to you. I think your story will inspire a lot of people, and there's a lot to learn there. So thank you so much for taking the time out.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, and folks listening, I know you're going to love this episode. Please like, rate, and review so we can get more great guests like Elijah. All right, have a great day.
I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Ballara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you.